If you're eating all day long, your gut is never getting a break. Think of doing bicep curls all day long. Like your bicep muscle is going to need a break. Think of your gut the same way. If you're constantly doing it, eventually your gut's going to be like, I'm out, I'm done. I'm not going to function the way you want me to. And then that's when we start to run into those issues too.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Doc Jacque Show. I'm excited to have Brooke on the show here today. For those of you who have not been living under a rock, Brooke and I work a lot together. And one of the reasons we do this is because she and I share a lot of same and similar core values on nutrition, on gut health, on hormones. And I think we stumbled across each other even just via Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. And then we just started, instantly connecting. So I have a lot of patients that work with her. She has clients that work with me. And we do this back and forth because we realize that there's so many facets to health. And it's good to have a second eye to take a look at things. So she is a functional nutritionist, which again is awesome. So it's not just your standard, hey, I go to a dietitian or somebody of that nature, and they're just going to put me on the standard American diet. Brooke approaches things a lot differently. She even incorporates like menstrual cycle eating as well as workouts there too. So there's all kinds of different facets here. So I will just start with this here, Brooke. For those people who don't know, haven't watched any of our videos before, what got you into this? What made you interested in doing functional nutrition?
Yeah. So I'm in a place now where I feel like I can fully understand what my body needs, know when to, transition based on where I am hormonally as a woman, and like truly not hate my body. But I haven't felt that way for a long time. I was overweight as a kid. And then in high school, I started experiencing acne and severe PMS. And like most girls, I'm 35. So like most girls in that stage, which still happens now, my mom took me to the doctor. She didn't know any better. And they prescribed me birth control to help fix it. So I was like 15 years old on birth control. And I remember once I was driving and I had been experiencing weight gain, and I was active in sports. There wasn't like a significant change in nutrition to really justify it. And I called the doctor's office and I told them, and I remember the nurse telling me, she's like, well, that's not possible. So then I just felt so dismissed. I was like, well, okay. So like now it's me. And then like any other 16, 17-year-old girl at this stage, I started to restrict food. It led to binging sometimes because I was so restrictive. I didn't know how to diet. I didn't know how to treat myself well. I'd watched my mom who didn't have a great relationship with food. And every time I thought you need to feel good in your skin, you need to diet and you need to restrict. I grew up in what I call like Snackwell's generation, right? Everything was low fat and the cookie was okay because it didn't have any fat in it, right? And so that was really my perception. And I didn't have a great relationship with how I looked until I got into my mid-20s. I started studying nutrition. I actually read the South Beach Diet first, which I definitely don't encourage, but it's a book that I read. And I started finding myself more and more intrigued with nutrition. So I quit my career and I went back to school to be a trainer at first. Started with a really large company that I got actually really lucky to just be surrounded by super smart people, dietitians who took a whole body approach. Our company partnered with physicians who took natural approaches. So I really started to get intrigued and see how the body was working together. And I feel like I personally got smacked in the face with it when my dad passed away. And I felt the major implications of trauma and stress in my body. And it really forced me into looking at how my body was reacting to stress and how my hormones were getting impacted and my gut health. Everything in my body went off when that happened. So it really forced me to see that and understand it. And I was starting to look at my clients and the ones who were really struggling, that at that point I was really talking calories or, your workouts. And the mindset was, well, if you're not losing weight, then you need to eat less, or you need to work out more and you don't skip a Monday, right? Like the whole mindset around that. And I was like, well, what if I'm feeling them? Like, what if there really is more to their piece of the puzzle too, like there was to mine? Because I knew that I had been eating well. I knew that I was working out consistently. So why was my body struggling, even though I was doing all the things that everybody was saying we needed to do? So I really started diving into a lot more and partnering with different physicians that I knew. And I was seeing there was this whole piece to the puzzle that nobody was really talking about. And I was seeing women, especially who were in their 40s, who had had kids and were working out with trainers who had bodybuilding mindsets around what they were doing, and maybe had this perception that, like, well, all my clients want to just be really lean in a bikini and giving them egg white type diets. And I'm like, and I was like, well, what if that's really not what they want? Like, what if they really just want to feel good in their skin? And feeling good in their skin, what they think it means is being really skinny and being that size 2. But maybe that's not what it means. So it's really kind of led me to what I do now, and just understanding like what's actually impacting a woman's body and why they may actually be feeling that way. And when I started learning more and more that most nutritional studies are done on men, not on women, that I was like, so we've been basing all these things that we're doing for women off of a man's body, and we're not the same at all.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I think I'm sure. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Science? I don't know. No, but there's so many gems in there. And one of the things that, and I appreciate you sharing about your dad and everything, whether it's, somebody who's starting on a health journey or somebody choosing to go in a different direction, what's really important is to always have a really strong why.
Yeah.
And something like that, even though, nobody should have to go through that, it's a strong rooted piece to what allows you to continue to move into the right direction. And any time where you may want to stop, or it's too hard, or it gets difficult, you can always look back at that moment and be like, no, this is really important, not just for myself, not just for my family, but for the people that I work with. Because people need to see things differently. Again, the standard American diet, it's a food pyramid. And if you eat it, you're going to look like the food pyramid. Like it's just basic. And what they're teaching dietitians and nutritionists, like I've had people use others and I'm like, they're having you eat what? And then I grew up in the bodybuilding world, so I know all about the bodybuilding diet. I did multiple competitions, and I had a healthier coach. Like he had me eating like more organic stuff, but like the calories up, calories down, like you burn yourself out. Yeah. And then you're like, what happens afterwards? And if you don't properly reverse diet after, your body just blows out of proportion. And it's because you damage your gut, you damage your hormones, you cause too much stress. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, but go ahead.
I think it hit me the most, especially with women, when I had our kids, because I was like, wow, like my body just created a human, birthed a human, and fed a human with its body, right? So like, how amazing is that? But also, if you think about that in another sense, that means that my body is going to respond to stressors differently than a guy's, right? Where like my husband or you could do up and down with dieting and get away with that more. My body's not going to handle that the same. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me to grasp my head around, because for so long, women have been like on this diet and then they go to this one. And the average woman does 5 different diets in a year, which is insane. And so we've done that. And then year after year after year. And then we get to a point where we feel stuck. We feel like we can't lose weight. And then we get told it's our age, or we get told it's the fact that we have kids, when really that's got nothing to do with it. So I think that all really hit me the most when I had kids, because I was like, wow, how amazing my body just did that. But also like, look at how I've been treating my body too.
And at the end of the day, like those types of things that you mentioned, they're excuses or permission slips to just pretend like there's nothing you can do. And then this is just life. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who do fall into that. And I know with some of the clients that we work with, there's been patients. I just met with one earlier this week, I believe it was this week, she would do like the calorie restriction. She just kept gaining weight. And then so she did calorie restriction because that's what she knew to do. Yeah. And she dropped weight. And then all of a sudden, boom, she put on, I think 20 extra pounds on top of what she previously was. And she's like, that is not what I wanted to do. Yeah. And so from like a functional standpoint, when you put yourself in that starvation mode, which is what that is, restricting your body, first off, your body needs calories. Calories are energy. Calories allow you to survive and thrive. If you restrict it, then there are sacrifices that have to take place in your body. Yes. And especially for a woman, thyroids will go very quickly. And then you'll have that blood sugar dysregulation. You'll get insulin resistance. Then you'll have the grazers who just eat all the time with leptin resistance. Their body never tells them to stop. And then you're like, how do I stop this? Like, are you sure you're committed to this? Because we're about to destroy and de-educate everything that you've ever known. And that's where you basically come into play.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you just hit on there too, right? So the grazers, I run into this a lot. We are very fortunate to live in a world where food is very readily available to us, which is amazing. But
Right.
at the same time, we have lost touch with being able to know when we're hungry and when we're not hungry. We had said this earlier. I said it's like food hunger or brain hunger, right? Our food is designed, especially if you're eating packaged food, companies literally invest in studies to whatever is going to make you want to come back to eat that food. That's how they make money, right? Like if it tastes like crap, you're not going to go buy the product again. So it's smart of them on their end to invest in whatever's going to make you want to keep purchasing their product. They're not thinking about your health when they're designing that product. They're thinking about what's going to make you want to keep buying it. And when you eat a certain food, like that has a combination of like salts and carbohydrates and things like that put together, think potato chips, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always explain it this way: a plain baked potato with nothing on it doesn't sound that appetizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a baked potato with butter and salt and things on it sounds amazing.
Sour cream, bacon bits, cheddar cheese.
Your brain responds to that. So we get into this where packaged food is so readily available. It's quick, it's easy. We live in a society where we want to do everything fast. So that's what we reach for. And then we start to eat the potato chips. And then an hour later, we're hungry again. So we eat something else because it's not actually satiating us. And then our brain is actually cueing us to want more of it. So we're not reaching for the things that are going to be nourishing to us either, because we have wired our brain to want different. So that's one I always explain to people. I'm like, one, it may not actually totally be your fault, right? For why you're reaching those things. But at the end of the day, we still have to rework how your body's responding to it. And then the other thing I always explain to people too is if you're eating all day long, your gut is never getting a break. Mm-hmm. You are constantly putting your gut through this cycle. I always explain it as like, think of doing bicep curls all day long. Like your bicep muscle is going to need a break. Eventually you're going to take it out.
Not mine. Not Adam's either.
Yeah. But you're gonna, eventually that muscle, that's like think of your gut the same way. If you're constantly doing it, eventually your gut's going to be like, I'm out, I'm done. I'm not going to function the way you want me to. And then that's when we start to run into those issues too.
Well, so there's a lot. I was trying to take notes as you were saying that too. There's one I want to touch on with if it fits your macros when you're talking about the calories of things. When people are in these diets and the concept of if it fits your macros, if used properly, can have some benefit.
Yeah.
But what are you typically seeing when people are doing the if it fits your macro? What do you see on their meal plans? Besides chaos?
They're going to put gummy bears in there. They're going to fit graham crackers in there. They're going to eat their oatmeal baked with like all these different fancy things in it. Or they're going to do like egg white and something pancakes with like Walden Farms syrup and stuff on it. Whatever they can do to make it fit in their macro. But it's fine because I'm eating McDonald's. I've told people, I'm like, I could probably fit my macros from McDonald's. But that's still not going to give
one meal.
Yeah. Your body needs food for two big reasons: calories and nutrients. So you might be getting the calories, but you're definitely not getting the nutrients. And eventually your body's going to go back to that point where it's like, hey, I've needed the nutrients. You haven't been giving them to me. So either hormone function gets thrown off, all these things, systems in your body that require those nutrients to function properly is one. But then on the other hand, your body's still going to crave, and it's going to be harder for you to stick to those macros because your body's going to crave because it's lacking the nutrients that it needed.
Yes. And yes. It's like I said, oh my gosh, I think it was like 3 years, maybe 5 years. I don't even know. I've said it a while back, but you have the choice each day with what you put in your mouth. Right. And at this point, whether you're in America or in Europe somewhere, like Canada, Mexico, whatever, you have a generalized idea of what's good and what's bad.
Yep.
We don't really need to tell you that.
You should eat a vegetable. Yeah.
Yeah. But past that, pretend your body is a house. What type of materials do you want to build your house with? Do you want to build your house with little teeny tiny twigs or like little paper cards, which is like your McDonald's? Or do you want to build yourself up with, your superfoods, good proteins, good carbohydrates, good fats. And then you have like these concrete bricks, which are how buildings are constructed. Each time you put something in your mouth, the calories are not the same. You're either going to be calorie deficient, or really you are calorie deficient, and then your body will break down. It will release certain things. It'll sacrifice things. It'll break your digestive tract apart to try to release amino acids. Like there's so many things that will take place. Your cholesterol will go up because the inflammation damages tissues. There's so much into what we eat and then what our body does as a reaction. And then when we get those reactions, people will find an organ to blame. Yep. I'm gaining weight because it's my thyroid. I'm gaining weight because of this. Now I'm depressed and I'm going to be put on this antidepressant. You gain 20 pounds. Like, so there's a lot of pieces that go into this. Is there anything you wanted to kind of add into that?
I think it's funny. I don't have any scientific evidence to prove this yet, but we have a generation, like I said, Snackwell's generation, right? Everything was fat free. What do we need for our hormones to function efficiently? We need fat, right? We need the cholesterol to feed the pregnenolone. Yeah. And then we have this generation of women that were eating low fat for over a decade. And then they're also going to their doctor saying they're having hormone issues and experiencing PMS and not feeling good. And then they're getting put on birth control. And not once are we correlating to, hey, we need that cholesterol to feed the pregnenolone, to feed the hormones, but they're not getting the cholesterol. And then now they're getting all these PMS symptoms and not feeling good. Like it's prime example, and that may not entirely be the reason, right? But it's prime example of a nutrient not being present to help support other systems in your body functioning appropriately.
Yeah, it's ingrained in us. And I'm going to do this. When you hear this phrase, fill in the blank, right? And whether you're listening or watching here, but fat makes you
fat.
What are we told? Makes us fat. I don't care what age you are. At some point, you have heard that eating fat makes you fat.
Yes.
And the longer you hear that, the longer your body feels that to be true, even though that it's not. And so when because we'll work with people, like, we need you to eat more fats. And they're like, or they don't know what healthy fats are because nobody's ever taught them. They're like, I don't know what to do. Like, is that fried food? Like, I don't think I should eat fried food, but like, what do I do? Fat, I'm afraid to eat it. So we usually, I know that you'll talk to me and you'll say, you usually see a lot of women, especially, are protein deficient. They have to get some carbs in there too, especially for full body function, brain function, thyroid function. But I would say fats and protein are probably the main categories that tend to drop because people don't understand them, or they fear that fat's going to make you fat, which again could not be further from the truth.
Or they fear the cholesterol, right? Because I still run into where people are like, well, cholesterol is bad for you, so I don't eat the whole egg. And I'm like, well, why is cholesterol bad for you? And they don't fully have the answer. And I'm like, cholesterol is actually not the problem. Your hormones are more than likely the problem. You need DHEA to help you break down cholesterol. So if your hormones are off, and I was like, think about your typical 50, 60-year-old man who has a high stress job and they have high cholesterol. And I'm like, has their doctor ever checked their hormones to see where their DHEA or testosterone or anything is? I was like, more than likely it's tanked because of the stress. So I was like, no wonder they have a cholesterol issue. They're not processing it. So the cholesterol, though, at the end of the day, isn't the problem. It's not the steak that they ate that was the issue. It's the stress and then the way that their body is responding to the stress and everything else. So we do fear that. And I'm with you. I catch myself sometimes, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, it's okay that I just ate 4 eggs for breakfast, right? It's actually really good for me. My body needs the nutrients out of that. But you sometimes can get into well, that's a lot of calories and that fat's going to make me fat. That old conditioning can come up very often.
Which is, again, why it's really important to have that strong why. And then whoever you're working with, if you're working with Brooke, make sure you trust. Okay. She's been doing this for a while. You have to trust the process. Results don't happen in 4 weeks, right, Brooke? They don't just happen in 4 weeks. It takes time. Yeah. Repetition, consistency. Can you feel better in 4 weeks? Yes. But what we do that's different is we want to set you up not on a diet. We want to be able to fix your relationship with food so that you don't change your diet, you change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And once that's changed and adapted to you, you can flourish.
If results could happen in 4 weeks, I would be happy to not have a job because of that. Like that would
Yeah.
be amazing. But we live in I call it an Amazon Prime world, which is awesome that we have the technology and the things that we have. But at the same time, we have to understand that your body doesn't function that way. And it's not going to. It's not going to adapt to the I want it now responses. As a woman, it takes 90 to 100 days for your follicles to catch up, right? And so
Yeah.
I've said that to women before, and I've watched their faces be like 4 months. And I'm like, yes, at a minimum, at least, right? I
Yeah.
won't work with women for less than 6 because it takes time. And that's the difference though, right? I tell people you can't try to take a lifestyle approach with a 21-day fixed mindset. You
Mhm.
have to go through a different mindset. And it really is trusting that this is different. This is uncomfortable. It's out of what I'm used to doing, but also what I'm used to doing hasn't gotten me anywhere and it's gotten me to where I am now. So maybe I do need to trust something else.
Yeah, and burn the boats too, because that's the other thing is you'll have like the fear of comparison where we'll have clients who will say, "Well, I was on I was on an ACG diet and I was 500 calories a day and I was barely getting by, but I dropped 40 pounds." And that happened in a shorter amount of time. And then when you're coming to us, you're like, "Well, I put on 70 pounds since then, and I want to have the same quick, fast results as starving myself and pumping myself full of ACG."
Yeah.
And when those results aren't Amazon Prime to you, you're like, "Well, I could just go do that again. Maybe I'll just go do that." And you slowly start sabotaging yourself. And the same thing is going to happen. It's just a lot of people's motives, if they don't have a strong why, it's superficial. From
Yeah.
the physical look of it is superficial, but in terms of the depth of the importance, it is also superficial. So you're more likely to sabotage yourself and go back if you're not willing to put in the work. And we're not saying that the work is easy. It gets easier. There's always days, especially with raising kids in this lifestyle, it gets difficult, but the
Yeah.
more we can, put our foot down and guide these people in the right direction, the better they could be, not just now, but for life. Because we don't want somebody to work with Brooke and say they lose 15, 20 pounds. And then they're like, "Okay, Brooke, we're good." And then 6 months later, they come back to Brooke and they're like, "I put all that weight back on and then some. Can you help me again?" It's like, what I did clearly didn't register to you. So yes, we can help you, but you need to keep these things in play. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah. If you're going into anything with the mindset of, well, I'm only going to do this until I'm done working with you, and then I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before. It's like, well, you have to recognize that everything you're doing has a consequence, right? Whether it's good or bad, there's always going to be a consequence to your choices. And the consequence of prioritizing your protein and eating your vegetables and going to sleep on time and drinking your water is that your body's going to feel really good
Mhm.
and you're going to have the energy during the day and your mood's going to be better. The consequence of eating food that doesn't have the nutrients and not drinking water and drinking a glass of wine every night and living off of caffeine is that you're going to feel like hell. You're going to need to live off of those things to survive, and eventually you're going to struggle in your body and you're going to wonder how you got there, right? And that's the consequence of the choices that you were making. So you have to understand that the consequence of what you were doing before has gotten you to need to talk to me in the first place. So if you want to go back to doing those things, then you're going to end up in the same consequence again.
Yeah, I'll see you later. Like
Yeah.
I'll see you. I'll see you when this happens again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about. We were kind of prepping prior to this. Let's talk about misconceptions on gut health and hormones.
Oh, I
I'm gonna
love
kind of let you take the lead there. Have fun with this. You can
it. I was
take gut health first or hormones or mash them together. I want to hear what you have to say.
So I was explaining to a client earlier, he's been feeling off and his physician wanted to do blood work to get his his nutrient deficiencies. And I was like, that's fine. And I was like, we can find out what your nutrient deficiencies are. And I was like, but we also know your gut health is off, right? So I was like, let's find out what those nutrient deficiencies are, put you on a supplement, and then you're still not going to be absorbing those nutrients at the end of the day. Because no matter how quality of a supplement you're taking, it still may not be the way that your body wants to absorb that nutrient. So I said, you still may not be absorbing it. So we're going to spend a lot of money on the blood work. We're going to spend the money on the supplements and still not fix the issue. I said, the issue for why you're not absorbing the nutrients is your gut, right? At the end of the day, we have to go to the root issue. A lot of times, especially because gut health is a hot topic. And I just told you about a company that has their own 4-week gut healing protocol coming out. And I was like laughing, but also like so annoyed because I was like,
concerned. You were concerned.
Yeah, because I'm like, there's all these people that are going to do this because it's a big company and it's a big name. They're going to go in with the wrong mind frame for it. They're going to go in thinking it's fixing something. They're going to do some restrictive approach, which there's nothing wrong with in the right context, right? When it's used appropriately, but they're going to have to take things out of what they're doing. And then they're going to be done with it in 4 weeks. They're going to feel better, but they're going to go back to what they did before because they never actually got to the root issue of why they were feeling gut issues in the first place. Or I'll get people who do the food sensitivity panel that you can order online and just, you probably know which one I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 years later, they'll be like, yeah, I did my panel. And then it said I couldn't have green beans. So I haven't eaten green beans since. And I'm like, that's not the fix. You don't need, green beans are great. That's actually not the issue. The green bean wasn't the problem, right? The problem was whatever was making you react to that. So sure, you might temporarily need to take that out, but we got to fix what's there. So if you're going to go into these food sensitivity tests, which are a hot topic, but not actually test your poop to see what's going on in your gut and do the food sensitivity panel along with it, then there's no use in you doing the food sensitivity panel. There's no use in you following a 4-week gut protocol unless you actually know what you're trying to fix or why.
Yeah, I actually had, he's a doc friend of mine. He started to try to get into this and then he realized he was way over his head. And now he just kind of leans on me to try to help him and some of his patients, which is fine. I love the dude to death. He's an awesome guy. And so he's been having gut problems for a really long time, probably as far back as chiropractic school. He's had issues and he's had symptoms of other things that are an offset of poor gut health. So he's like, hey, brother, I just ran a foods test. I sent it over to you. Just let me know what supplements I need to take. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, I ran a test. So I want to know what I have to take. I'm like, no, you totally misunderstood the point of that foods test. And trust me, that not every foods test, by the way, for those listening, is created equally. I called Everlywell when I was switching companies and I was like, how's your test done? And then they was the most haphazard, basic test I've ever spoken to. And I started trying to relate with these people and they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, I will not be using you. So anyways, there are better tests. We use the better tests, but that's the whole different story. The thing that gets tricky that I talk about is we have tests for things and we have what I call cause testing or symptom testing. Mm-hmm. Food sensitivities are actually kind of a combination of both. They don't occur without there first being a cause.
Yep.
And that is where we have this huge divide. And people are like, well, what do you mean by that? It's sensitivity is not an allergy. It's not something that sticks with you for life. This is something that your body cannot break down this protein compound. And it's pushing undigested food particles through a gut that is permeable. There's leaky gut. It's fallen through the blood. There's so many steps before you get to that food reaction. Once it's in the bloodstream, boom, then your body's like, what the hell is this? I don't recognize this. Attack. Antibodies are produced. They go after it. So when somebody just runs a food test, it's good to get your feet wet a little bit. But in terms of supplements to take, listen, your body's not breaking it down. Something's more than likely going on in the stomach. You probably have gut permeability, but when you understand the depth of this, like you and I do, it's literally like you're cocking a shotgun and taking a shot and hoping that one of the pellets hits something that's going to make you feel better. And that's another way where people will start on the holistic journey or the natural journey. This just isn't working for me. Then go right back to medicine.
Yep. I have too many people who will go, and you see the commercials for them all the time, right? If you're feeling this, take this food sensitivity test. It could actually be this, right? And one, it drives me crazy when people call them food allergies. I'm like, it's not an allergy. You don't need an EpiPen. You're not going into anaphylactic shock. You're not actually having an allergy. It's like my husband was, he competed in Pan Ams and weightlifting. So he was a competitive Olympic weightlifter. And now when CrossFit starts calling cleans squat cleans, he's like, it's not a squat clean. He's like, the squat is implied when you call it a clean. And I'm like, it's the same thing. Guys, the language drives me nuts, but you don't have an allergy. You're not needing to walk around with an EpiPen. You have a sensitivity, but also we don't take the sensitivity as seriously as we need to. I've told you this, when my son has an issue with gluten, I had to tell the school that he had a gluten allergy to get them to take me seriously about why he can't have it. Yeah. And we often will see these companies advertising stuff in the wrong context. We'll do it. And then I'll have someone be like, well, I lost 5 pounds. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course you did, because you reduced a stressor in your body for a short period of time. Your body was having an inflammatory response to the food. So you took it away. And when you took it away, your body didn't have as much inflammation. You didn't lose 5 pounds of fat. You lost 5 pounds of inflammation. Yeah. But you still didn't get to the root issue. And that's why the weight loss stalled. And that's why you didn't lose anything past that 5 pounds. And now you're living in this state where you're having to restrict those foods, but you don't actually know why. And you haven't gotten to the root issue. I never like anybody doing a food sensitivity test unless they're going to do like a GI map or something with it, because I'm like, there's no point. We're going to maybe take something away from you, but we're not actually going to heal why we're taking it away. And then I'm never going to be able to give it back to you.
And here's a higher level analysis of that as well, right? So when you have that list of foods, say you do, believe it, hook, line, and sinker, and you're like, all right, I'm avoiding all 20 foods. You avoid. What are you going to do? You're clearly going to substitute your protein with another protein, your carbs with another carb, your fat with another fat.
Yep.
If you don't fix the cause, you are slowly but surely developing more food reactions, more food sensitivities. And so when you retest and you're like, wait, I eat all those things. You're like, well, no shit. You didn't fix the problem. You need to make sure that you do this. Because there will be, I've worked with patients in the past, not so much now that have done this, but they'll be like, I just want to do a foods test. I'm like, all right, go for it. Or they'll buy one like for a friend. And It's like hoping to get them in. And then when you have 30, 40, 50 different food reactions, people are like, what? How did that happen? It's like, well, your digestive tract has been, destroyed. It's been damaged for a long period of time. So now it's that part of rebuilding. And it's funny that you raise your hand, right? Because you are healthier than 99% of the population out there. And you still had a lot of foods. 46 foods to avoid.
Not that I'm counting or anything.
Yeah. Who's counting now? But seriously, and when I did my test, I did the foods, but then I also did like the food additives, like stevia, if I could have sucralose, which I would never do to myself, but the food colorings, all that stuff, all of those things are able to be seen on these tests, which give you a baseline of a symptom that we can help to avoid, which would then also can sometimes be a cause for like stomach indigestion, headaches, fatigue, etc. But we always have to understand the why. Why did that happen? How did that happen? And then fix that. And then you'll be able to put those foods back in. Okay.
Yeah. Usually we'll tell people, like, if you've done a food sensitivity and you have a couple things that come back, then you may not have a glaringly big issue in your gut. But if you come back with multiple, like mine with 46, right? You have a glaringly big issue in your gut that you have to do a GI map test so we can see what's in there.
Yeah. And it depends too. And I don't know if Everlywell does this or not, but there are certain medications that suppress your natural response. So it'll throw off your foods test. So if you're on like prednisone, or you're taking, even sometimes like Benadryl can interfere with the readout of the test. And so if somebody comes back with like 3 different foods on their test, I'm like, I'm going to be the bearer of bad news. You're probably going to have a lot more than that on a retest, because you're going to have some like subclinical responses. So we'll do the best we can, but just know going into it, you probably have more. Or the person is massively immunocompromised. I have seen cancer patients that I've worked with that are on immunosuppressants again. And because they're suppressed, their true foods don't show. But the ones that do, are massive food responses that you have to be 1,000% on top of to remove it and then fix the underlying cause again.
It's funny too, when we talk gut health, obviously I talk hormones a lot on social media. So I have a lot of women come to me for hormonal health, and then I do a consultation with them. 90% of the time when we're talking hormone health and there's an issue, I see something glaringly wrong with the gut health from even just from their intake form before I've even talked to them. And then I start talking to them and I'm like, okay, this is either like gut or you have like mold somewhere, right? That's underlying. And obviously we know the symptoms can present themselves very
Sure.
similarly. And then, you talk gut health and people are like, well, my gut's fine. I'm pooping fine, right? I go every day. And I'm like, just because you're going to the bathroom every day doesn't mean that there's not something wrong. Like my husband, prime example, he didn't have any symptoms of H. pylori. He went to the bathroom 2 to 3 times a day regularly. But he had worse H. pylori than I did. And
Mhm.
so just because you're not feeling symptomatic in the way that you think you will with gut health, meaning like diarrhea, constipation, bloating, gas, doesn't mean that you're not experiencing something in your gut that could be creating an issue. And usually when we see a hormone issue, especially sex hormones, there's usually a gut issue that we have to dive into. And I've tried to explain to women before, right? Your hormones don't just go off. Like you didn't just develop PMS all of a sudden. You didn't like your progesterone didn't just tank. Like that didn't just happen. There was something else, and I call like the triangle of function between like your thyroid, your gut, your sex hormones, and your adrenals that caused that to happen. And we have to figure out where it was. But you don't just all of a sudden get weight loss resistant. You don't just all of a sudden develop PMS. Most of the time, something is starting in your gut and then it's leading out to those other three.
And it kind of shows our indoctrination as well as we're growing up. We go to the doctor when we feel sick.
Yeah.
And so we don't do anything about our health until we feel sick or until it gets bad enough for us to do something about it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to gut health, there, especially H. pylori, could be subclinical. It doesn't give any of those symptoms, but you could have Hashimoto,
Yeah.
and somebody would be like, well, it's a thyroid issue. Well, but you've got H. pylori and that can trigger that. What do you mean? Or even food sensitivities can trigger Hashimoto, because if you build your tissue out of something that you have a response to and antibodies to, what's your body going to do? It's going to attack it. So making sure we understand the full why behind this is so crucial. And when you talk about hormones, I mean, you said people were like, oh, I have normal bowels. I mean, with the new patients that I've had, I don't know if I've had maybe one
The actual normal bowels. Yeah.
with like normal-ish bowels. But
Yeah.
women with hormones, you better believe they're constipated. Women are so constipated nowadays. And if you're constipated, I can tell you without testing you, your estrogen's off. I can guarantee it. You're not getting rid of it. And so it recycles back into the body. And then you have another stage of estrogen dominance. You could build up a bacteria in there called beta glucuronidase that is going to make it difficult for phase 3 estrogen elimination, or you are just a closet alcoholic. You're drinking all the time and you're overconverting testosterone to estrogen.
Yeah.
Hormones respond to stresses. Okay. Hormones respond to stress, just like your adrenals do. They'll make more cortisol when you're stressed out, or they'll burn out and you won't make any. But when you're stressed, what happens? Progesterone came down. What's not a progesterone problem, it's an adrenal problem. You were too stressed out. You stole all the building blocks for progesterone, and now you have too much cortisol. So what do? Fix the adrenals, and then boom, the progesterone goes back up, cycle goes back to normal. Same thing can happen with diet. Women who don't go to the bathroom regularly, or they heavily consume dairy or even cosmetic products with those estrogen compounds in there, or estrogen mimicking chemicals, that can also push your estrogen up too. So many women nowadays are walking around just like giant estrogen balloons, and no wonder cancer is at an all-time high.
Yep.
And it's because we haven't been told the why or how that's happening. And then from a nutritional standpoint, we've been lied to since we were born.
I love the EDCs or the endocrine disrupting compound conversation too, because I'll have a lot of people who are like, it's not that big of a deal. Like I'm just using this lotion or just using this deodorant. And I'm like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Like you're literally putting it on your largest organ of your body every single day. So no, it's not that big of a deal. Like you wouldn't eat it, you wouldn't consume it, but sure, throw it on an organ. Why don't you do it? Right? Like, let me know how it's feeling. And we think it's not that big of a deal because you don't feel the impacts every single day. It comes in a compounding impact, right? The one time you were at a hotel and used whatever lotion the hotel had is not the issue we're talking about. I'm
Right.
talking about the stuff you're doing day in and day out in your home. And that actually can block estrogen, right? It can interfere. Your endocrine disrupting compounds didn't just create the name out of nowhere, right? They're endocrine disrupting, meaning they're disrupting your endocrine system in some way, shape, or form. And we undervalue how much that can be because it's not, going back to the same old mindset, it's not the diet and it's not the workouts. We have a hard time looking beyond the diet and the workouts and how those things can be impacting how we're truly feeling day in and day out.
Yeah. And with women and those types of chemicals as well, the makeup, seriously, we'll see, I'll have patients that, they'll be like parents that I'm working with. And like, you know what, my daughter she's just breaking out all the time. Like, what can you tell me about? And then like, we'll run a hormone test on her and they'll just give me like basic stuff just to try to figure out a way to like get her tested, because teenagers don't exactly want to, necessarily take care of their health, especially at that age. But we'll come back and boom, estrogen will be through the roof. And so there's a couple things that I'll talk about. It's like, well, what type of makeups, what type of perfumes, what type of chemicals is your daughter putting on her body? And do we need to eliminate that? And that's the first time they'll be like, wait, what do you mean? Like, did your daughter buy something from Bath and Body Works? Yeah?
Yeah.
Throw that shit out. Did you buy it from like Walmart in a colorful set? How colorful was the box? The more colorful the box is, the more damaging I can almost guarantee it to be.
It's
And there's
sport marketing.
yeah. And then past that, so we talked about the estrogens, but then I feel really bad too, is when you'll get these women who are having hormonal acne and then they'll cake makeup on top of that. And that's even more sensitive skin because it's inflamed, which means there's more blood flow there. When you put something on top of it, that means you're going to absorb more of it faster into your body, into the bloodstream, and you just keep fueling that cycle. Okay. And when it comes to those hormones, what's your insulin or what's your blood sugar like? Because if you're converting and you're going more towards PCOS, let's take a look at your insulin. Let's take a look at your blood sugar. What's going on there? Or your adrenals? Why would that be happening?
Yeah.
So if we can nail down those lifestyle habits, those lifestyle traits that are causing this to take place, we can then empower you to then know that each time that you do that, you're either creating the problem or fixing the problem, but it's up to you because we can't do it for you.
I have a lot of women when we first start, like maybe they'll hear something like this, or they'll hear me talk about hormones, and then we do a consultation, we start working together. And the first few times that we're working together, a lot of times we're working on foundational things first. And I always try to explain it as like, okay, building a house. I'm building a house right now. So everything is related to
Yes.
building a house. They have to build the foundation of our home first before they're going to put the walls up, before I can put all the fun decorating and detail type things into it. It's the same thing with your nutritional approach. We very often want to dive into what supplement should I be taking? Should I be seed cycling? Should I be cycling my workouts? Should I be cycling my nutrition around my workouts? What diet should I be following? What should my macro split be? What specific workout should I be doing? We want to know all those things, but I'm like, you're not even eating a vegetable yet. You're not eating protein regularly. You're not drinking water. We have to start there because we undervalue so much how much those things play a role. And I find a lot that when someone will come to me, if we can get them drinking water, if we can get them sleeping regularly, if we can get them reducing their stress, if we can get them doing their workouts appropriately, if we can get them eating in the right balance for what their food should be and getting more nutrients out of their food, they start to feel significantly better. And then everything else, like we've talked about before, right? When your organ functions in a good place, everything else becomes easier. But if it's not in a good place and you want to focus on the details, like the diet and all that stuff, you're essentially fighting your body to get there. And could you get there? Absolutely. But you more than likely won't maintain it. And you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to be like what you talked about, the person who's gaining the weight back. And then you're going to feel like it's your metabolism that's broken or slow, or then you're going to buy into your physician. I had a client whose physician told her that she feels like crap and needs to nap midday because she's 40 and has 3 kids. And I was like, no, it's not at all. Like you actually you're feeling this because you're 40 and have 3 kids because you're drinking wine every single night. Your gut health has been off for a decade. You have an autoimmunity. So that's why you feel this way. It's got nothing to do with your age, but your age is the amount of years that you've been experiencing this. And now that's compounded you feeling the way you're feeling.
Years of neglect. Yeah. For every year you're alive, if you're not investing into your health, you're neglecting your health, and good luck with that. And there were some gems I had in there too for you. So the concept that I talk about, the paralysis by analysis, where people just keep asking and asking and asking, and they're like, well, I can't do it yet. I can't start yet because I don't have all of the information in front of me. It's just freaking just start, just go. Yes. But what others can sometimes do is they're like, okay, I can do that. Okay, I can do that. Okay, I can do that. But they're waiting for something that they can be like, oh, I just can't do that. And they're like, you know what? Until that changes, I can't do this program. And that leads to more procrastination from getting to your end goal, which again goes back to what we said in the beginning. Your why was not strong enough. It's usually because somebody else told you that you need to lose some weight. And you're like, well, he thinks I need to lose weight, or she thinks I need to lose weight. And so I'm going to try to do that. Yeah. And I mean, people, whether you weigh too much or too little, or even if you weigh normal amounts of weight, even if your body weight is normal, everyone's going to have something to say. So if you tune out the noise and do it for yourself, do it for your kids, do it to set an example, do it to break generational traits or diseases that were supposedly passed down to you, like you have the ability to be able to do that. Diet and lifestyle influences those genes. It's called epigenetics. And so when Brooke is working with someone, you're like, hey, get this food in. I know one type of food that's probably the most under-consumed food by men as well as women. What would you say that would be? And I want to see if we land on the same thing.
You mean like macronutrient or fruit or food?
Like a food type, not macronutrient. I don't know how else to kind of work. We're probably not going to hit the same.
Oh, I think red meat is wildly underconsumed.
Okay. I was going to say fiber.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
Red meat for sure, but fiber as well. When we are under fibered, I just made that up, you need it for healthy digestion. Fiber grows probiotics, but fiber also helps bind the estrogens in the detoxification pathways. So just one little tweak to your diet can reduce your risk of cancer just because you're pulling down and getting rid of excess estrogens.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to do, 35 some grams a day, not that difficult. And I know, like, in my mindset, food's emotional, thoughts emotional, indoctrination, et cetera. Like when we think about fiber, and I know like fiber bars and stuff, we're usually talking about like the elder population where they're chewing on like sawdust and I'm drinking my Metamucil. Like, oh, this is going to be good for me. Like that's in the back of my mind when people talk about fiber. I laugh about it because I eat probably more than enough of fiber, but it's not just for old people. It's not just for colon cancer or to regulate the bowels. There's so many more things that go into just that one small thing. Now, you said red meat, so I want you to dive into red meat. Why is red meat so important to you?
Hormonally, it has the most absorbable forms of nutrients that your body needs to thrive. It's higher in vitamin A, it's higher in iron, well, specifically heme iron, which your body needs to absorb. It's not equatable to like the iron supplement that you're on. B12 and B6, which are essential for your hormonal function, your thyroid function. The biggest thing I usually explain is there is a big difference between me taking a supplement, even the most quality form, and me eating it through food. Your body prefers and it's designed to get its nutrients from its food. So as much as you can get, the better. And there's a lot of misconceptions around red meat, right? Cholesterol obviously being one of them, and the kidneys and, how you're processing it or the environmental factors of it. But we are designed to eat it. And a lot of times I will have people who are like, well, I just don't digest it well. And I'm like, that's not an issue with the red meat. That's an issue with your gut. You probably don't have the right acidity in your gut. You probably don't have the enzymes to break it down the way that you need to. We need to look at your gut, not the red meat. And it's the same thing when it comes to a lot of other foods that are especially becoming taboo nowadays. The way that we produce it, The way that we're getting it is probably going to make a difference in the environmental impact. Absolutely. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And there's a reason that iron is so essential when you're pregnant. There's a reason that like B12 deficiency, especially in a child, is irreversible. Like you cannot, the brain damage that comes from B12, we can't undo. So there's a reason these nutrients are so essential, and then we're lacking them, and you cannot out supplement those nutrients.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, but I've had vegans as patients that got pregnant, and immediately in pregnancy, they're like, I can't stop craving red meat. I'm like, why do you think that is? Like, it's your iron. You need to get your iron up for you and the baby, you know? And when we think about red meat, just like you talked about, you know, like the difference in comparisons, red meat, conventionally raised red meat, one of the worst things you can eat.
Yeah.
Okay. What we're talking about is your grass-fed, you know, your organic cows you actually see out in a pasture eating grass. That is where the gold is. And I am a prime example of not being able to break down beef or steaks back in the day. This story would be real quick, but I used to be able to eat steaks all the time. And then at some point when Megan and I were dating, and then we got married, and I would eat steaks, and then in like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I would just vomit the entire thing up. And I'm like, I'm staying away from meat. I love it, but I'm staying away from it because I can't digest it. I had H. pylori and low stomach acid. So find that cause, right? So we're going to have to wrap this up here. And we're probably going to have to do more of this. We'll do like a little mini series, but what's really important is, you know, Brooke is not like, I can almost guarantee she's not like anybody else that you have worked with before. If you're already a patient or a client of mine and you're looking for more nutritional advice and more things that are specific for you, target specific, and she understands, like we'll get on calls together and go over tests. She understands the tests that we run, which also catapults you in terms of credentials, in my opinion. So where can people reach out to you, find you, and be able to basically get started up with you?
Social media, I'm probably on my Instagram way more than I should be. So it's Brooke Rozzie, Rozzie. You can just message me on there. Just let me know that you listen to it. And then, I mean, my number one goal, I tell anybody, is not to take your money. It's to support you, right? So whether we work together or not, if there's something that I can do to support you, just reach out to me. Just ask a question, and I will tell you if it's something that maybe we need to dive deeper into or not.
Okay. Awesome. And we'll put all that in the show notes as well, so you can click it if you're listening. And then we'll tag it through Instagram so people can find you as well. But thank you again, Brooke, for jumping on here this morning. I'll let you go here, but we'll do this again soon.
Thank you.